Hello, and welcome to your favorite bookish podcast, Fully Booked and Caffeinated. I'm Heather.
I'm Kelsey.
And today's episode is based on the paranormal horror / thriller. I don't know, there was a lot of tropes in this book. Novel, Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. Which, yes, I appreciate this dude for having how to pronounce his name on his Instagram. He has like a little parentheses and says it's Ukrainian because I was gonna botch this. I was gonna have to do the YouTube where you put the word in and then some weird person comes on and tells you how to pronounce it.
That's my favorite thing. I do it pretty much for every episode.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that also that he cut that out for us.
I know, me too, because I had to do that for the Middle of the Night book, that one character.
Mm-hmm.
The Indian character, I was like, I don't know how to pronounce his name and I don't want to embarrass myself, so I had to I had to listen to it before we recorded. I was like,
I had to do that for Akatar for every name. I was like, and luckily, you can find it all on the internet.
You really can, truly. But anyways, before we get into it, I wanted to also say a callback to our bookish banter and more. I got the Dunkin' Latte from Dunkin' yesterday.
Okay.
It's gross.
Okay. I thought that might happen.
I don't know. I don't know. I got the caramel flavoring, and it comes with like the coffee milk as your milk option.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the espresso, the caramel, and then this coffee milk, and it wasn't great. I didn't like it personally. So.
It doesn't sound great, but
yeah,
you tried it.
I tried it. I was like, I'll give it a shot, obviously. But they're pumpkin munchkins, though. I've been enjoying those thoroughly.
Oh, I love the pumpkin. Oh, I love the pumpkin muffin, too.
I was never a pumpkin girl. I don't know what happened.
This is making my life complete. I'm so happy about it.
I finally have just been around you so much that now your pumpkin obsession has melted onto me. So
I have bullied you into liking pumpkin, and I don't regret a thing.
No, I don't either. I got the pumpkin cream cold brew from Starbucks the other day. That was delicious.
So good.
So I'll have to try a pumpkin spice latte. That might be a little much for me, but I will try it, and I will report back once I do.
I mean, Starbucks pumpkin is much more mild than
I don't think
Dunkin'
I would get
Donuts.
I would not get a pumpkin spice latte from Dunkin'.
No, and their pumpkin
but I would get it from Starbucks.
Syrup is like aggressive, so maybe stay away from that.
And I think that's why I don't like the Dunkin' Latte, because the coffee milk is aggressive. The s'mores syrup that I got in the summer was aggressive.
That's too much. Mm-hmm.
I like the cookie butter one.
Yeah,
but everything else I'm just kind of like, no, I'm gonna stick with the caramel or the butter pecan, and that's about it. Even like their blueberry, I feel like they changed their blueberry unsweetened syrup. I got it recently and it just tasted, it had like a weird aftertaste. So I'm like, why gotta mess up a good thing? Like, why gotta mess up a good thing?
Dunkin' has really just dropped down in my good graces.
I know. It's up and down, up and down.
It's true. It's true.
But yeah, so that was my coffee experience this week. I tried the Dunkin' Latte, did not like it, but still support anyone who does enjoy it and wants to try it.
Yes, to each their own, but ew. Today I had a Wawa hot coffee.
Whoa.
And now anyone who knows me knows I do not drink hot coffee unless it is from Wawa.
Okay.
Ugh, I love Wawa hot coffee. And I prefer either their regular blend or their hazelnut, but I got pumpkin spice today. The only reason I don't like it as much is because it's a mild roast. I need something a little stronger. But I'd had that with their hazelnut creamer, which I also love. It was delicious.
Nice.
And it was a little crisp because it was when I was on the way home from the airport. So I was like, oh, I need this hot coffee. So
because all of a sudden it's crisp fall weather in the morning already, which I love it. Appreciate it.
I love it too, but I hate it's the same thing in the spring, this inconsistent.
I know. Freezing
in the morning, 100 degrees in the afternoon.
And it's going to be a tease because it's going to say like, oh, fall's here, but the next week it's going to be in the 80s most of the week. So it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Don't bring your sweaters out just yet.
It's a farce. I know. I almost was like, oh. I was like, no, it's
not. It's a false alarm. All right, so cheers.
Cheers. So, did you know that Jason Rekulak was born and raised in New Jersey?
No, another one.
So clearly the only male authors that we enjoy are from our home state.
I mean, it tracks.
And also,
we didn't do this on purpose, but it tracks.
And then on the book cover on the front, there's a little blurb from Riley Sager about Jason and like his writing. So
okay,
these boys,
Inception.
This is the only boys club I want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it. Which the book obviously had references to certain Jersey things, which I'll talk about. But I didn't realize that he was born and raised from here.
I didn't even think about that. I knew it was set in New Jersey, but I just didn't even think about it.
Yeah. Because right now he lives in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there for a very, very long time. He's kind of new to his own writing scene, so there's not much information about him, because this was like he had another novel that was out, but this was his, which I believe was nonfiction. This was, I think, his first fiction, and then he has a new one that comes out next month, I think.
Yeah, I saw that.
So he's becoming more prominent, but he was actually, from what I saw online, he was a publisher at a indie press called Quirk Books in Philadelphia, and he was a ghostwriter.
Oh,
so he
okay.
ghost wrote a lot of fiction and nonfiction books.
Okay.
So was it one we've read before or an author we know? Who could say? That was what he did, and then he wrote this book, and now he has the wedding book coming out, which also sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
That one sounds interesting. So yeah, not much about him, but he's from Jersey, so it's something.
We support it.
As per usual, Goodreads description.
Mm-hmm.
Mallory Quinn is fresh out of rehab when she takes a job as a babysitter for Ted and Caroline Maxwell. She is to look after their 5-year-old son, Teddy. Mallory immediately loves it. She has her own living space, goes out for nightly runs, and has the stability she craves. And she sincerely bonds with Teddy, a sweet, shy boy who is never without his sketchbook and pencil. His drawings are the usual fare: trees, rabbits, balloons. But one day, he draws something different: a man in a forest dragging a woman's lifeless body. Then, Teddy's artwork becomes increasingly sinister, and his stick figures quickly evolve into lifelike sketches well beyond the ability of any 5-year-old. Mallory begins to wonder if these are glimpses of a long unsolved murder, perhaps relayed by a supernatural force. Knowing just how crazy it all sounds, Mallory nevertheless sets out to decipher the images and save Teddy before it's too late.
Wow. I don't think I ever read the summary, because that's really telling you how dark it's going to get.
So the story begins with a 18-month sober Mallory. She's young. She's only in her early 20s. She's a very, very young girl. Throughout the novel, you get small details explaining how she became an addict. You don't get the full story till more towards the 3/4 mark of the book. She has a sponsor, Russell, who I don't know. I don't know. How did you envision Russell? Because he wore these sweatsuits.
Okay, yes. I envisioned him with I envisioned him from New Jersey with a thick gold chain and a tracksuit with a white tank top underneath with a little chest hair peeking out.
Legitimately.
Bright white sneakers. Yeah.
Yeah, that was more or less how I envisioned him too. I loved it though. So he gets Mallory a job interview with Caroline and Ted Maxwell, who need a summertime nanny for Teddy, their 5-year-old son. Ted, the husband, is initially against Mallory working for them, citing, her history as an addict as cause for concern, but Caroline's no, we have to hire her. And Caroline gives off weird vibes from the beginning because she seems really low key and down to earth, but then it's if you piss her off, you piss her off, and it's, you don't want to deal with that. But she really wants Mallory to work for them, so Ted relents, and he was fine, she can come for the summer, and we'll see how much Teddy likes her and how well they get along. Kind of a little trial period, which obviously works out. They give Mallory this list of rules, and she lives in, I guess, kind of it's like a little shed in the back, but it was turned into a residence that someone could stay in. And they straight up told her, no overnight guests. And I'm like, she's a early 20s, and you're really not going to let her, so you're going to have her spend the whole summer and not have like one dude stay over if it's like after hours, and she's in her own residence, not like she's in the house.
Exactly. And they're like, it would be complicated to explain to Teddy. Teddy should be sleeping.
And then they're not allowed to talk about religion with Teddy because now Mallory seems to have found religion after becoming sober, but she's like, it's fine. She's like, I wouldn't talk to a 5-year-old about God. And not too much screen time, and just all these parameters of things that like her and Teddy are limited on what they can do. And
which are completely reasonable for a parent to give these parameters. Yeah. But I mean, rewind for a second, because the first red flag is that they hired someone who's 18 months sober to watch their 5-year-old child. Yeah. And I'm not saying anything about addicts, but she said that they had like 100 applicants, basically.
I know. And I was like, so what was it about Mallory that
like you just already know there's something up? You know what I mean?
100%. So Mallory and Teddy bond instantly, and they go on these like little adventures into the enchanted forest, which basically is this forest behind their house, and they come up with all these different areas, and they basically make it into like a fairy tale adventure, which I truly loved. I liked the imagination even that Teddy has. He's very like creative for a 5-year-old. And then while she's on the job, she meets a young man named Adrian, which I was like, of course they're going to just throw her, because she already said no overnight guests. So I knew that there was going to be a dude, and Adrian is this landscaper, and that's how he meets Mallory, because he's on, which again, I'm trying to envision what lawn truck he was on, what kind of lawnmower, because he's like cutting wheelies, he's like doing donuts.
Yeah. What brand of a ride-on is this? Because he's
like literally just like, I was like, okay.
He's like, drifting in it.
Yeah. And so of course him and Mallory have this instant chemistry, and she ends up seeing him like a couple times outside of him being at the house, and they kind of create like this friendship, but it's low key for a while. It's not like immediately like sexual, which was nice because I was nervous about that. Mallory lies to Adrian though about her past. She doesn't want to come clean to him about being an addict, which contradicts herself, because throughout the novel she's basically saying how she doesn't want to lie to people anymore, and like she wants to be honest, and she immediately like lies to this guy, starts their whole relationship off on a lie. So she's like
just keeps building this web of lies,
piling it on, saying she's a Penn State runner who's on a full ride scholarship, which was supposed to be her future, and obviously that didn't come to fruition. And then the Maxwells have a next door neighbor named Mitzi. So Mitzi's a spiritualist who claims that she can communicate with the dead and read people's auras. So I'm like, who are all these characters? Like, now you just have this psychic next door who gives off, I don't even know what kind of vibes. I'm like, how old is she? I couldn't get the vibe of how old she was. It sounded like she was old, but then not. And she was seeing callers at all hours of the night. It's like, okay.
And they insinuate that she's into drugs, that she's got all these men coming over, and
marijuana, and then she gossips about the Maxwells with Mallory, and just
she's also super racist and problematic, 100%. But
yeah, of course she is. And then obviously the Maxwells are basically like, please stay away from her. We don't want her around our son. Please and thank you.
Once again, a completely acceptable and rational thing to say. And Mallory's like, I'm going to go with no, and I'm going to do what I want.
Exactly. So shortly after arriving, Mallory learns about Annie Barrett, who was a young woman who was reported to be murdered in the guest cottage that Mallory's currently staying in. So we have this little vibe of, oh, you're staying in a haunted cottage. So now there's like the first paranormal vibe that we get. Teddy is this, as I said before, he draws now, or the bio said, like, he draws all the time, and he draws like these cute little stick figures. Like when Mallory was first there, he drew like a stick figure of the two of them like playing, and he draws rabbits with really big like buck teeth and everything, and just like really childish drawings, but he loves to do it. But then eventually he draws, and this scared the shit out of me when I first turned the page and I saw this face that he drew. It's not even like that scary, but it is. It's just a woman's face with like really big black eyes and like a big black mouth, and it just, I wasn't and she was like under the table in like one picture.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I can't do this. And of course I'm reading this at night before I go to bed. So I'm like, this is creepy. So this book definitely creeps me out. But the drawings start to become a little bit more sinister, and they disturb Mallory, and the sketches start to feature that woman who Teddy calls Anya. And Teddy tells Mallory that Anya talks to him and sleeps under his bed. And the Maxwells are completely fine with this. They're like, oh, this is healthy. Like, it's just his imaginary, stereotypical imaginary friend, and he'll grow out of it. Like, it's fine. There's nothing weird here whatsoever.
Which, on the surface, yes, children have imaginary friends. If my child had an imaginary friend who they were then drawing in that creepy ass way, I'm out. I'm bye-bye. Like, that's not a friendly ghost. That's a bad ghost.
And then the pictures begin to coalesce into true artwork that clearly a 5-year-old is not drawing. And so Mallory immediately knows something spooky is up, and she becomes obsessed with learning about Anya and Annie Barrett, and she immediately realizes that, oh, Anya must be Annie Barrett. She must be this woman who was murdered, and she's trying to communicate through Teddy to solve her murder, which I was like, that's a little far-fetched, but okay, I'll go with it. I'll roll with it.
Once again, Mallory just taking on so much responsibility. She's like,
also,
I now have to solve this murder.
But like, without batting an eye. She's like, I'll do it. It's fine.
They were really stretching this Christianity thing, because I don't think all Christians would be this so quick to, be like, you know what, I am going to help this ghost instead of trying to purge it from my life.
Yeah, because there's this thing where Teddy has quiet time where he goes in his room for like an hour, and that's when he'll draw, but he's not allowed to have like any screen time. He can't talk or anything. But she like hears Teddy up there having a full-blown conversation, obviously a one-sided conversation, because only Teddy can speak to Anya. And Mallory's like, something's up. I gotta figure this out. So then she does the worst thing you could ever do, which is, oh, I'm gonna put a baby monitor in there and I'm gonna watch and see what happens. Listen, I have a baby monitor. Those things are they're creepy. And you want to see something paranormal? I mean, you do you, girl.
I can't even, when I'm at your house and you have the baby monitor on, I can't even look at it. It's creepy. I'm just waiting for something horrible to happen.
Too.
Also, just knowing how the Maxwells are, you know that they would not be okay with this.
No.
And Mallory does not give a fuck. She's like, at the end of the day, I'm going to solve the murder and they're going to be thanking me. So whatever rules I have to break in the meantime, it's all par for the course.
Legitimately. And so she puts this, she like stuffs it like in between a pile of stuffed animals, which clever. And so Teddy goes into this room and he like immediately starts to like talk to somebody, and the screen like glitches. And I'm like, of course it does, because it's paranormal. Like, what did you expect? And she hears an unfamiliar voice say hello. And then she tries to go into the room and like the door's locked. Like she can't, like something is physically stopping her from getting into this room. She's like shoving her body she's trying to body slam this door down, and she cannot get into this bedroom. And also on the video, like she saw basically like Teddy like spazzing out on the bed, like something was entering his body.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would freak the fuck out. So she goes into the room, and Teddy's kind of not with it, and then he's kind of still under like the spell that Anya puts him under, and then he comes to, and she sees that his right hand is covered in drawing charcoal, but he's left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
So why is he drawing with his right hand? Like, he's clearly left-handed, so he shouldn't be able to make any kind of, he shouldn't even be making these beautiful artwork anyways for 5
Yeah, they are detailed.
I was actually surprised, and the artwork is so well done.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes the book like 100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Mallory decides she's going to test her theory that Anya is using Teddy. So what does she do? She reaches out to her good old psychic neighbor, Mitzi, and she's like, can we do a seance? And Mitzi's like, yes, but it has to be with a Ouija board.
And it has to be
near Teddy.
During the day while Teddy, she wanted Teddy there. She's like, Teddy can hold on to the Ouija board.
Uh-huh.
And Mallory's like, I draw some type of line. Uh-huh. It's not where it's supposed to be, but I draw a little line.
No. So she calls up her good old friend Adrian, and he's like, I need you to just watch this child while I do something insane. So, and he asks no questions. He's like, okay.
The fact that Adrian believes her,
I know,
throughout this whole thing, I was waiting for the ball to drop and to find out that he didn't actually believe her at all. He was
fully supportive. Like, she's showing him the drawings, and he's like, no, I believe you. Like, you're definitely got something spooky going on here.
Yeah, he's definitely possessed. Cool, let's prove it.
I know. So they're using the spirit board, and the planchette, the little triangle thing, is like moving frantically and just producing a seemingly random jumble of letters. And Mitzi's pissed because she thinks that Mallory's doing it herself and that there's no actual spirit, and she claims that this is a failure. But Mallory's like, the girl was like standing over, which that creeped me out. She was in the room with her. Like, she was like putting her hand on her shoulder. She could like feel her breath on her neck. And I'm like, nope. No.
It's a no from me. But she signed up for that. She signed up for that.
She did, and she didn't even seem that alarmed.
No.
I would have been a little bit more alarmed.
She was more alarmed about the fact that Mitzi was offended and didn't believe her.
Yeah. So from this point forward, things just escalate extremely. Because then the next thing that we have is just this moment that was disgusting. That, like, Ted was in Mallory's cabin.
Oh my God.
And he just makes all these awkward advances on Mallory. And then he's just in her bed with no pants on. Like, I think he was in like boxers, but he had like no pants. And he's like drunk in her bed. And she was saying, yeah, me and like Caroline got in like a really big fight. We fight all the time. And he's like describing his marriage woes with Caroline.
Yeah.
And he was like, Mallory, I'm going to take care of you. You know, it's like, I know that there's something between us. Like, you know.
Oh my God.
I'm like,
which
okay.
I was like, okay, this is and this is like a familiar trope. Okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then when he said that she found wads of tissues.
That was what I just was going to say. I was like, no.
And her bras. This man was jerking it in her bed while, like, holding her bras? Like, what a weird... I don't know. I'm not a man, so I don't know.
And, like, listen, you can have, like, your own kink, and that's fine, but you should... The woman that you're using should be aware that this is what you're doing. Like, this
absolutely.
Is clearly a violation.
And you are her employer.
Yeah.
You have keys to her home, obviously.
Yeah.
You can't just be showing up in her bed.
Oh, God. And then we find out more disturbing details.
And again, unfolds. Mallory is unfazed. She's like, I don't want to lose this job. I'm going to throw these tissues away. I'm going to put my bras back in the dresser.
I really need this job, so I'm going to accept these inappropriate sexual advances.
Like, oh, hold on. There's a big ass cricket in here. Hold on. Oh, fuck. You bitch ass.
Did you get it?
Yes.
You said you bitch ass.
Oh, I always yell at them. How'd you get up here? They're supposed to be in the basement. Oh, son of a bitch. Okay. Ugh. Now I gotta put my feet up. Okay. What were we saying? Oh, okay. So Mallory really wants this job. I get it. I get that it's hard for an ex-addict to find a job. But are we weighing the pros and cons? You are babysitting a possessed child, living in a haunted cottage, and getting unwanted sexual advances from the man of the house.
Yep. And she's like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm like, it's not fine.
It's not fine.
It's clearly not fine. But, okay. So, there's one afternoon, and this has happened before, Mallory, like, falls asleep while she's, like, supposed to be babysitting. Like, Teddy's doing his quiet time, and then Mallory just, like, passes out, like,
and doesn't set an alarm. What are you doing?
No, and nothing happens at that point, but still, like, she's leaving Teddy unsupervised, and then it happens again, and she has drawn all over this wall. Like, she's having the visions of, like, Anya and Annie Barrett and everything, and she's just like, the walls are just covered in drawings of this guy strangling a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Her right hand is smeared with ink and charcoal. Mallory's also, you guessed it, left-handed. Mm-hmm. How can she draw this beautiful artwork?
And they're obviously the same exact style as the ones that Teddy was drawing.
And so she's like, oh, Anya's definitely using now me to do the drawings, because they had given the drawings. She had confronted Caroline and Ted about, like, what was going on with these drawings, like, showing them finally. And so their solution was like, oh, we're just going to take away all his drawing equipment. And again, not phased at all that he's drawing, but there's obviously something paranormal going on. And Caroline's like, it's fine. Everything's good. Everything's completely fine. So now Anya's like, well, I have to fucking talk to somebody. People need to know my story. So she uses...
I was cringing so hard when she wakes up and then she's like, she hears the car driving up and I'm like, oh, no way you're going to get out of this one, Mallory.
No. Oh my God. And so the Maxwells are like, cool. You're definitely using. They definitely, the first assumption is you are doing drugs. And so...
And who can blame them?
No,
I mean...
Of course. And so Mallory's like, I will take a test. You'll see, like, I'm drug free. And then obviously she was. And they say, like, okay, like, you can stay for the weekend, but you can't work here anymore.
Because you fell asleep while our child was playing Angry Birds for 5 hours.
Yeah. And also you drew all over our walls. But that's fine.
Yeah, they've seemed less concerned about the drawings on the walls.
They seem less concerned about things that they...
No one in this book is concerned enough.
They're not. Clearly. And at this point, this same night, she was also supposed to go on her first date with Adrian. And this was the night that she was going to finally confess to her lies.
Allegedly.
Own up to them. But before she has a chance to, Ted fucking blows her game up. And he's like, oh yeah, Valerie's like, blah, 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 blah. And Adrian's like, huh? What?
It's like,
so,
no, like, she's on a scholarship to Penn State. As if he needs to, like, tell her employer that. And they're like, honey, no.
So Adrian dips. He's like, I can't do this. I'm pissed.
Oh, and also, Caroline... Is she a psychologist or does she just work with... So she works with veterans who have like PTSD and stuff.
Yeah.
So the way that she talks is so placating but also condescending. And just like, I deal with this every day, honey. Like,
I know.
It's hard for him to process. And I was just like, Caroline, you have issues at home, honey.
But then Adrian like shows up later and because he got a drawing from Anya. Which... How? Because clearly it has to be at the Maxwell's house that she's doing this. So how the fuck did he get a... But I was like,
you can drive a lawnmower through these plot holes.
It's fine. So he's like, I know that Mallory's telling the truth about everything. And then he like was like, let's go for a drive. And then like takes her to her house in Philadelphia and is like, the vibe was weird during this part because Mallory was assuming that he was gonna like drop her off at home and just leave. Like, I don't know. It was weird.
Very weird. And
this didn't quite make sense to me, but
he just parks outside and he's like, "Who's that man? Who's that man on the ladder?" And she's like, "I don't know. Like, can you please drive away?"
Yeah. And so finally, like, they go to a park and she admits to Adrian that, yes, like, I'm obviously an addict and I don't go to Penn State. I was supposed to. And then she explains that her history of addiction occurred due to the death of her sister, Beth. And so now we get the flashback to when Mallory was driving Beth and her friend to fucking Storybook Land. And I love this place. And I was so... oh my God. We took so many field trips there. I've
really
been there. I can't wait to take Millie there. Like,
I've never been to this place.
Oh my God. You're going to come with me and Millie then. Because it's an adventure. It's probably creepy now as an adult.
It sounds
creepy.
Kid, yeah.
I loved it. And so when he throws in Storybook Land, I was like, I already loved this author, but now I loved him even more because he brought up an amusement park that I loved growing up as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So she's driving, Beth and her friend, to Storybook Land. And then she gets in a car accident. And she was on her phone when the accident occurred. So she immediately blames herself that she was the reason for the crash and that, you know, it killed her sister. But you come to find out it really wasn't her fault, actually. It was kind of inevitable. And Mallory ends up getting fairly injured from the accident, which leads to opiates, which led to her addiction to it. You know, she was kind of numbing the pain of what happened to her, and then obviously the emotional pain that she was dealing with. So unfortunately, and of course this part is obviously so like relatable and realistic because this is what happens. People are put on these pills to help them feel better, and then they
like
end up
pain medication, which is necessary,
and then they end up just getting addicted to it. So it was sad, and it was. I knew, and then it
obviously progresses to much harder drugs, and then she's into heroin, and then it just
like when the author like talked about like what she was doing, and I'm like, this girl's like 19 years old, and it's like, and I know that does happen, and that's like heartbreaking, you know. So I felt bad.
Yeah, it was definitely very. This was very believable as someone who, you know, has family members who've gone through addiction like that, and it starts so small, and she before you know it, you ruin your life.
She cut off all communication with her mom because her mom was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, stop calling and everything. Like, you know, so she ended up, and she's just obviously banging dudes for drugs and stuff. And it's just like, she's such a young girl, and it's
who had such incredible future. Yeah.
It's all around very unfortunate scenario. So they come back to Springbrook and they want to go talk to Mitzi because Mallory knew that something happened with that seance, and she just wants an explanation as to like why Mitzi said it failed. And Mitzi's not home, but they let themselves in.
Of course, as you do.
And there's just drug paraphernalia all over the house randomly. And
everywhere.
And Mallory's like, oh, and she can tell like some of the things, like she finds like a tourniquet and she sees like the needle lid. So she's like, oh, like Mitzi's into like hard stuff. And when they're there, she finds the note that, because Mitzi had like wrote down the letters that the board was writing. And so she has that. And then just 2 detectives just show up. And they like immediately like go to like arrest Adrian and Mallory. And obviously Mallory is like, well, I know how to deal with cops. So she's like, just have to like shut your mouth. But Adrian's like, you know, all rough and tough. And he's like, no, I didn't do anything. And then,
there's a lot of
being a typical
racial profiling, but also a lot of entitlement of rich people in a rich town. Like, how dare you?
Yeah. So, and obviously they didn't do anything, but Mitzi's missing. And so that's a cause for concern. And then Mallory explains why she's there. And she's kind of like talking about the story about, you know, Annie Barrett. And the detective is like, girl, she wasn't murdered. Like, she fell in love. She's a white woman who a white woman who fell in love with an African American man, and they escaped the racism of the town and like lived a lived a happy ever after. Like she's not dead. And so Mallory's like, what the fuck? She's like, so it's not Annie Barrett making these drawings. She's like, who the fuck is Anya?
And also the fact that Mallory is just so nonchalant about this story. She's like, well, I might as well tell the truth. Tell this cop about the seance and that the child I'm babysitting is possessed by a ghost. And once again, just another believer. The cop is like, okay, I get it. No problem. But that's not true. There is no ghost. Anywho, let's move on.
Exactly.
Like, what?
Yeah. I was like, okay. So the Maxwells have a good pie party for Mallory. I'm like, this is weird. Like, you're firing this girl, and now you're celebrating her. And she's talking with Teddy, and Teddy's talking about how he's never been on an airplane. And Mallory's like, huh, are you sure? Because you flew here from Barcelona. You've been in Barcelona for the past couple of years. Like, you can't get to Springbrook, New Jersey without flying. And Teddy's
and
like,
it's a pretty long flight.
No, and Teddy's like, no, like we drove. And Mallory's like, no, you didn't. And so she realizes that something's up. They did not come from Barcelona. She's now finally turning her eyes onto Ted and Caroline Maxwell. It took this long.
She's like, okay, so if it's not the ghost of Annie Barrett, let me look at the living people in this story who are living in this house.
Yeah, basically. So Mallory's like, I need to have a conversation with Anya, so I'm gonna let her possess me.
It's a flawless plan. I see no issues.
Adrian offers to be Prince Charming and sleep on the floor while Mallory's in the cottage to see if Anya shows up. And she does end up drawing something in her sleep, and it's just it's like a black circle, and it's like she's like looking up, and there's like the man and everything, and so she's just like, all right, Anya is in this hole. I don't know where this hole is, but like Anya's in it, and like she's dead. And so she knows that something has to be going on with the Maxwells. So she decides to, she just like nonchalantly is like having like a conversation with them. And she was like, so just fesses up everything and just wants to know, like, you didn't go on a plane? Like, where were you guys really? And it turns into this whole fiasco. And Mallory realizes too late that she said too much and that she cannot escape now. Like, she just threw all of her cards, every single card she had on the table, did not have any backup plan. She's just like, I'm just going to confront them and everything's going to be fine. And obviously it's not fine.
Because she loves being honest with everyone except Adrian. And she has word vomit where she just can't shut the fuck up.
Literally. And so Ted, she goes to like escape, and Ted hits her in the back of the head with a wine bottle. And she just is out cold. And then she wakes up in the cottage, bound to a chair. So now Mallory's like, okay, cool, now I'm gonna die. And Caroline finally like tells her this whole story. And she was like, you know, we were trying to get pregnant, and we took this year-long sabbatical to conceive. And, oh, before I even get to this, so there's this part in the book, which I didn't understand until this part. So she's at like this, at the goodbye party, the detective like shows up again, and for whatever reason, I can't remember, because didn't they like find Mitzi's body?
Yeah, I think she had like a follow-up question or something. I don't know.
And then Teddy is like in the shower, and she's like, oh, there's a really big bug in here, like I need you to come in. And so Mallory like goes in, and there's like really no bug there. And then Teddy's like concerned that the police are like, something's gonna happen. And then but then like she said, then they say in the book, the author writes that she had like this look of her face was like really pale, because turns out that Teddy's a girl. Teddy is not a boy. Teddy is a 5-year-old girl. And that was what she also like confronted the Maxwells about.
Yeah, so that's the big twist, is that they were hiding that Teddy is actually a girl. And they had told Teddy to keep your private parts private and not ever let Mallory see them, and to keep this secret under wraps.
Yeah. So Caroline says that we were away. She saw a Hungarian woman named Margit Baroth with her 2-year-old daughter, Flora. There were just multiple instances when also, why is Caroline just fucking creeping around a child's park? I don't know. She already had these weird vibes. So she says, just at the park, just making herself depressed because she can't have a kid. And she sees that Flora is just always on the phone and that Margaret's just like never paying attention to her. And then she like confronts her about it at one point.
Which is so weird.
How dare. And so Margaret doesn't really speak English. She's like Hungarian. And they get into like this argument. I thought fists were going to fly. And then everything was fine. And then there's this hot the hot air balloon festival. And Margaret is drawing. And this kind of gets you back to a bunch of the pictures that were drawn from that Anya was doing through Teddy, where there was like the hot air balloons, there was a woman painting, there was a picture of a child being taken away. And so this is what she was drawing, that during when she was drawing this hot air balloon festival, Caroline followed Flora, who was following a rabbit. And then Caroline is like, I'm just going to take you. You're not being well taken care of, so you should be mine now. This is fucking terrifying in general because this also happens.
Of course.
I can't. This was triggering for me, but it was fine. And so she notices that Flora's gone missing, and she goes to follow them, and she's arguing with Caroline again, and she's like, she like recognizes who she is. And then Caroline has like a taser, and she just fucking shocks her. And then she ends up like having a seizure. And Caroline's like, instead of calling for help, since I fucked up so bad, she just strangles her and just like kills her. And then she calls Ted. And she's like, Ted, I fucked up. You need to now fix my problems. So Ted is now an accomplice, and he buries the body, which the body was then found eventually. But they like escape town, and they take Flora, they cut her hair, and then they raise her as a boy named Teddy. And Teddy has no memory of that time. And apparently, which this is interesting, Anya is the Hungarian word for mommy. And Anya is pissed.
Oh, yeah.
That they took her child. And so Anya is possessing them because she wants Flora back, and she wants to fuck these people up for not only kidnapping her child, but also murdering her for no good reason whatsoever. So I don't know how Anya is able to be this paranormal spirit from the grave, but she can follow them wherever they go. So they escape town, and Anya's like, you can't escape me. And this is a big reason why they hired Mallory. They wanted Anya to focus on someone else.
Yeah. And they wanted Teddy to be distracted.
I don't know. And Anya's like, all right, well, no, now you just brought someone into your life that I'm going to try to tell my story to, and get you motherfuckers caught. So Caroline is obviously like, now Mallory has to die. She finds out that Caroline killed Mitzi, like, because then Mitzi came to the house because she realized that, oh, the seance was successful, and Caroline's just like, I can't deal with this shit. He's like, now I gotta kill more people. So Caroline is the villain in the story, which, like, I wasn't fully expecting, but I guess I should have, judging from her. But she was, like, the number one villain of this book.
Yeah. And
so she's injects Mallory with heroin to make her overdose, which, how fucked?
This
was the most fucked up part. Like, this girl is, at this point now, probably closer to, like, 19 months sober. You're really gonna have her die from an overdose. And so, of course, Mallory is falling into, like, this dreamlike stance. And she's trying to, like, ask Anya to save her. And I'm like, you really think Anya can do anything for you?
Anya can only draw, honey.
I know. And so, it's just this whole thing, and then she comes back to, and Ted's there. Ted's there to save the day.
Of course.
And he was like, oh, the heroin is baby powder. I switched it because
Which
I
also
love you, and we're going to run away together.
Baby powder into your veins?
I don't know.
And also, no one wants this. No one asked for it.
Ted is like, I am in love with you, and we're going to run away.
But he thinks this is mutual. He's like, now we can run away together. And she's like, we?
And I don't know what signs Mallory is giving this man to show that she's interested, because I didn't see them, but Ted's obviously delusional.
Yeah, and they allude to, they never really get into it, but they allude to the fact that he's kind of trapped in the marriage. First of all, because he literally killed someone or buried a body for Caroline. So, you know, she has that over his head, but also he doesn't have a successful job and they're just living off of her parents' money. So they don't really go into it. They just mention it as an offhand thing just to show how trapped he is in this marriage. And then eventually he's like, fuck it. We're going to run away together. I'm going to take care of you. Don't know how, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And he tells Mallory, he was like, I was trying to avoid you getting hired because I didn't want you being involved in this. And he was, so he was like, I was being a dick because I was hoping that you wouldn't want to work for us. And then, of course, Mallory's like, I really need a job, so I'm going to take this job. Caroline shows up at the cottage with a gun. Mitzi's gun.
She has so many weapons.
And she shoots Ted. And Mallory escapes.
She shoots him several times. And he's still going.
He's still going. Mallory takes Teddy/Flora from the house, escapes into the woods. She hears more shots, and then they're running into the enchanted forest, and they hide in a tree fort that they had created, but Caroline finds them. And then this part was actually really cool. I actually really like this part. Anya once again takes over her daughter's body, and she jumps down and just stabs Caroline multiple fucking times in the neck with an arrow piece. And Mallory's like, what like, what the fuck is that? And obviously she knows that it's, Anya, Margaret, like, doing this. It's not Flora. But Mallory takes the blame for the murder once she vanishes. Now she's finally gone. Margaret has gotten her vengeance. And the cops show up. She takes the blame. Everything's fine. And then it just like...
She also gets off scot-free, basically.
100%. Because it was... I don't know. I guess it was self-defense. I mean, they do have a dead body at the house, so I guess...
Yeah, it's just all a stretch. It's all a lot.
Yeah. And then you kind of get this 1 year later story, and it's Mallory writing a letter, or like writing the story down of what happened to Flora. And at this point, Mallory is obviously still sober. She wasn't actually injected with heroin. She reconciles with her mother, which I thought that was nice. Flora is back with her dad, and Mallory goes to visit them. It was kind of, when Flora was found, it seemed that the dad gave them the option, like, you can either you can either go back to being a female, or you can recognize yourself as a boy. And Flora wanted to go back to being a girl. Mallory could tell that Flora feels she doesn't love that she's there. And I think because Flora obviously doesn't want to relive that part of her life. Like, she was stolen from her family, stuck with this family that wasn't truly hers. And Mallory is all this part of it. And she gives a gift to Flora, which was really cute. It was like Mallory's recipes. And it was like,
that was sweet,
that they baked together. Mallory kind of accepts that this is goodbye, and she's never going to see Flora again, and she has to accept that Flora is just not going to want anything to do with her. And then as they're leaving, Flora comes running out, and she sticks a piece of paper in her hand, and it's the picture of them, but this time Flora's a girl. And it was just really a really cute ending. But she titles, the books that she's writing for Flora is called Hidden Pictures. That's obviously the title of the book. But yeah, so she ends up writing this book about the past so that Flora has it to read back on when she's older and relive the fucking terror she lived through
And really revisit that trauma.
and it'll really
Great
teach her
idea.
everything that happened. And
Maybe
the end. But anyways, regardless of how, now that I'm like reading this back, how many plot holes there was, I loved this book though. Like I flew through it. I couldn't put it down. I completely get the hype. And the pictures definitely made it.
100%.
Of course, because of how they were drawn, I was literally nervous turning the pages when there were pictures because I'm like, something. There was never really anything very scary, so I'm thankful for that. But initially, I was like, something's gonna pop up on this page. It's gonna be like a jump scare, but with a book.
Yeah,
I'm gonna turn the page and there's gonna be something I don't want to see.
And the children's pictures, like the ones actual Teddy Flora was drawing, were so much scarier. Because the other ones, I was just impressed by how accurate and the shading
the child drawing of Anya was fucking terrifying.
So
so now I'm concerned that there's just going to be this gruesome picture, and that didn't happen. But I definitely feel like the pictures added such a really cool nuance to this book, and it really was engaging.
I totally agree. I think this book would have been below average without the pictures.
Yeah. The pictures definitely made the story and made the story more, I guess you could say, believable in a sense, because
and engaging. Yeah. Exactly. You're seeing the actual illustrations instead of them just describing it.
Described, and you have to kind of try to envision, and so that this was just a really cool concept. And I love that he was able to get artists to just draw all this shit for the book. How cool is that? But I really think the pictures were a big part of this book.
Yeah, and that's why there was so much hype, because it's so unique. It's so different from other thrillers and things that are out there. So, and I had the Kindle version. So when I first got it, I was nervous that the pictures, because obviously I knew, you have to read this book with the pictures. Yeah. So I was nervous that the pictures weren't going to live up to the hype because they were on the Kindle, but they totally do. I mean, they look like sketches. It's the same.
I probably would have been more freaked out reading it on the Kindle because you don't know you don't know when it's gonna come up.
Yeah, that's true.
At least like the hardcover, I would see like the black on the spine, knowing that pictures were coming, so I was able to like mentally prepare myself. I think if I read it on the Kindle, I would have been fucked.
Yeah, because you're just swiping. Oh dear. Hello, Anya.
Oh yeah. No, I don't. Possession is not fun, and I don't want anything to do with it. So what did you think about the whole twist and what Caroline did and changing Flora's identity and just the lengths that this woman took to have this child?
I think I have two opinions. One, just from a strict story standpoint, I think, we've seen this trope before where mothers steal children or, and raise them as their own and have this whole elaborate story and scheme so that they don't get discovered and all this stuff. On the other hand, I didn't like that they switched Flora's gender. I thought it came across as transphobic. I thought it was really inappropriate. I think on its own, it's just, it makes you feel kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know how to feel about this. But then when you start looking at other instances in the book and the way that the author portrayed certain things, especially the parents, it starts to get even more problematic and the message gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. I have a rant to go on, but I'll save it.
Yeah, I thought it was weird that this was, the whole concept of having to change the gender, and then obviously like Carolyn's justification for it, saying like, oh no, like Teddy wants to identify as a boy and everything, and obviously like this is a 5-year-old kid, and she's already doing so much to this young child's mental health, and forcing them to identify as the gender that they don't want to be, and clearly you could tell that Flora wants to be a girl. Like, she only wears the same shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mallory realizes, oh, because that was the only article of clothing that they had that was purple.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only, like, girlish color.
Yeah.
And
it's the way she's insisting that this is Teddy's choice is making a mockery of the fact that children can wrestle with their identity at that young of an age, but you're forcing it upon this child. It's the same thing as the reverse, a child wanting to express themselves in another way and telling them that they can't.
Exactly, that's the difference. Like, because I know so many parents that had a child of a certain gender, and then as they got into, I would say there was one child I knew when they probably turned about 4 or 5, they wanted to recognize themselves as a girl. And so it does happen.
Of course. Like,
it truly does. And so obviously this is such a crazy instance where now the psychotic kidnapper is making this child identify as something that they're not. And so that's just going to, like, completely screw with you.
I think adding this as the twist is not worth the risk. It's not worth the risk of being offensive and transphobic, and it's not worth the risk of opening it to that interpretation when you could have achieved the same thing, but with a different, they dyed her hair different colors. They put colored contacts in. They, something else that Mallory could have discovered that would have given away the secret or would have made her start questioning things. It was just really inappropriate that it was about seeing this child's genitals. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it felt so icky.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, I loved the whole story, but that part I was just like, that did not need to happen.
That was, I think, probably the shock factor that the author was obviously trying to do. But I can obviously understand your reasonings of how that comes across as transphobic, because of course it does.
Yeah.
Like, of course.
And that's why begin rant. Sorry, everyone. When you look at just that, and the author has come out and said that he is fully supportive of the trans community. So it's just kind of like, this is weird. But when you look at these other things in the book, first off, there's several positive references to Harry Potter, which by itself, it's okay. It's fine. We talk about Harry Potter on this podcast. But if you're writing a book with a trans plot point, while also saying positive things about Harry Potter, it's just weirdly contradictory. This book came out recently. We know who J.K. Rowling is. It just felt unnecessary because the Harry Potter references had nothing to do with anything.
I didn't even clock that.
Yeah, I fell down a rabbit hole. On top of that, the parents who are atheists, and they are portrayed as super liberal. So they, just a lot of things they say about, like, caring about the environment and anti-screen time, all these things that are kind of exaggerated views that people have of liberal parents. Not only do they end up being, one is a murderer and one is a literal sexual predator. Yeah. He had a camera in Mallory's room. It's giving Pretty Little Liars where the villain was trans. You know what I mean? And it's like, that was unnecessary. There was one part that really, really bothered me when it was kind of like an offhanded comment that Teddy made, bringing up, like, asking Mallory if she could see her vagina or something. I don't know. It was very weird. And Mallory mentioned it offhand to the mom. And then the next day, Carolyn brings home all these books, very intense descriptions about, like, private parts and sexual acts, all this stuff that is way too mature for a 5-year-old. But also, first of all, from the story standpoint, isn't that going to show Teddy that he is in fact a girl? But also from a deeper standpoint, there's this whole thing about people wanting to take health education and sex education out of schools because they think that people are teaching 5-year-olds about sex, about all of these, like, graphic, explicit things. So the fact that that was put into the story really, really upset me, because it's like, this parent, yes, this is the the health education that people are so terrified of. And this isn't the reality.
It's not at all. No.
This isn't what they teach in schools. This is something that a parent freaked out and bought all these books. You know what I mean? Like, it just it rubbed me completely the wrong way.
That's valid.
So it's like that on top of the twist. I was like, what are you going for? What do you know what I mean? Like, you have to know that this is going to come off badly.
Yeah. And I guess it's so interesting for me. And I think I was so wrapped up in the story, and I was so like, I couldn't put it down. Like, I had to like read it. I didn't clock any of this. And then like when
also, remember, this is my second read.
No, I know.
I didn't clock it on the first one.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that if but I could see you when you go back to it, you're like, oh, like you'll catch everything that you wouldn't catch initially. Because you don't know. You don't know
exactly.
When you read the book
and
that
the first
Teddy's
time I felt icky.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like offended.
No, exactly. Because
then rereading it, I was like, oh.
I read someone's review, and then they brought up the transphobic, and I was like, holy crap. I was like, you're right. I was like, I didn't even see it from that standpoint. And I guess because I know that like I'm not transphobic, and it's like I support any and everyone's decision. Eric and I have openly talked about that if Millie ever came out as gay, bisexual, trans, like we would fully support her in whatever decision she wants to make. It's her life, her body. It's another reason why like I don't pierce her ears, because it should be her choice. It's her body. She should be able to do what she wants with it. So, you know, I know what my views are. So like obviously going back and reading people who are trans or, you know people in that community, and they read this book and then they're deeply offended by it. I'm like, oh wow, like you're right. Like I just totally missed that. And so, and like I feel bad that I missed that. But, you know, it is what
it's also it's kind of, it just sucks because you know that I like books with social commentary, but this is not a book that was intending to have social commentary. Yes. So when you're trying to have this escapism, especially in a paranormal book, because I did love the paranormal aspects of it.
I did too.
I thought it was creepy. Yeah. Like it really was. And like we said, the pictures were super creepy. They added to all of that. But then to kind of inject this into it and make you look at it through a different light, it kind of sucks.
Yeah. And I can understand how that takes away from the initial reaction that you had when you first read it.
Because even this time when I read it, I flew through it. And it was, I think it was almost 400 pages. Like it was a long book, but it was so captivating. First of all, because the pictures. Second of all, because you couldn't look away from the train wreck that is Mallory.
I know. And which is also interesting because we talk about all the time, like these like female protagonist characters, but like I liked her. I didn't.
Yes.
She's like one of the first female characters that I genuinely liked. She's stupid, but I liked her. Like I enjoyed that she was strong enough to come back from addiction, and I like that they didn't make her fall back into addiction, because I feel like a lot of times authors will do that.
Yeah,
make
I would have hated that
or whatever. And Mallory was very much headstrong and like wanting to get her life back on track. So
the really only good thing that Ted did was switch out those drugs. That's the only good thing. Okay, but did some parts of this remind you of another book that we read where the mom is hot and cold and the babysitter has a very interesting past and they're desperate for a job?
Oh, the housemaid?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
There were some parts where I was like, oh God, I'm having flashbacks to the housemaid. But obviously these characters I thought they were a lot more likable just as a whole, except for Ted.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because even like Caroline, like you just, you knew something was like her character came off as something's not right there, but you didn't realize how like nefarious she was until the very end. You just thought she came across as kind of like this uptight, crunchy mom that's like, all right, you have to do like this and that, and like nothing else can.
But then
can
she
happen.
has this noble profession where she's helping veterans who have PTSD, and that's such an amazing thing. So you're like, could she actually be as Looney Tunes as they're insinuating? Yeah. Turns out it's even worse than you thought.
I know. So yeah, all in all, very well written book. I'm glad that you brought up the whole transphobic thing, because it really is obviously something that should be talked about and not glazed over. But, I mean, is there anything else that you need to talk about?
I think that's it. I had my little rant.
No, and you did. And I think that you was very eloquent.
Thank you.
Very well put.
It was better than my bitch ass yelling at the cricket. Anyway.
So, figured with like the ratings, I was like, there was so many dark things in this book, but my favorite part was actually very adorable. So, okay. I rated this out of Enchanted Forests.
That's
those
cute.
Those parts of the book were my favorite, when Teddy and Mallory were in the forest, and that just solidified for me also her character and her arc, and it just made me like her so much, because she was just this really great girl, young woman, who was creating this imaginative world with this little boy, and that's rare. I feel like you don't really find that. And
I think that's why you're rooting for her too, because the whole time she's making horrible decisions. She's going against what the parents want, which is so uncalled for, even though, you know, she ended up being right. But the point is, she went against their wishes over and over and over again. But when I was young, I didn't have babysitters like this. No, I had babysitters who put me in front of a TV. Like, they had so much fun. And every day she's coming up with new things for them to do. And it turns out that they were right to take that chance on her, because she was so good with Teddy. Yeah. She was so good with kids. So I think that was completely necessary in order for you to like her, you know?
So the Enchanted Forest are my rating, and I did do 5 out of 5 because I really, really like this. This is one of the better books that I've read this year. Just the way that especially we've had such bad luck with male authors, and I was finally like, oh my god, is there another male author that I'm going to like? This is insane. And who would have thought? Not me. So, but just the way that the big reason too is Mallory and like her character, and the fact that she's finally another woman that I'm reading about that isn't psychotic, in the sense that like she
isn't high or drunk
falling off the rails. Like, she was very put together. Like, she had a really unfortunate past and made really bad decisions, and now she's trying to rectify them in the correct way. So it had me on the edge of my seat. It really did. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I loved the twist about Annie Barrett. Was like, nah, she just like fell in love with the black guy. And that was during the race, when racism was at its fucking height. So they had to escape. But they lived happily ever after. They had kids. They had a bunch of grandkids.
Annie gets a happy
She got a happy ending. And so like Mallory's like, okay. Like, you know, and it was just the whole idea of the kidnapping and Anya basically seeking vengeance against this family for taking her daughter away and also murdering her. I liked that. Obviously, like, being a mom now, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, get back at these people. So obviously I could have done without the transphobic stuff. Yeah, clearly. But I really like this book very much, and I will read his other books.
Yeah, I'm excited to read the new one. I rated this the same as the first time I read it. As a book, I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 4 Enchanted Forests. I love the pictures. Like we said a million times, they made the story. Also, wasn't offended by the way this male author wrote a woman, which is rare.
Unbelievable.
Even though she had issues.
She did have issues, which like you need to.
But they all did. Yeah, and it's like this whole laissez-faire attitude about her not caring that there's jerk-off napkins in her bed. Everyone had this same attitude of just like, meh, whatever. So it didn't make her bad. Yeah. You know what I mean? So as a story, I really, really liked it. The fact that we both really enjoyed the story and didn't realize the massive plot holes until we started talking about it just tells you how
well written it was.
Exactly, and how much you're really captivated by it, because
we've read books where we catch the fucking plot holes.
And my gosh, and it drives us crazy.
As enjoyable, but yeah, for this one, that's what I'm saying too. Like, when we read this, I'm like, wait, how did Adrian get that picture from Anya?
I'm like, oh, that's actually a really big problem. Mallory is fucking up left and right. Adrian is a hot mess. But it didn't matter because the whole story just worked.
Mm-hmm.
It just,
Yeah.
and I also, I mean, I don't think this is horror. I think it's definitely paranormal
Yeah.
and supernatural. And I liked that it was, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I like that it's not over the top. But then when we're just talking about it, I'm like, actually, it is kind of over the top because she gets possessed at the end.
But I feel like it's a classy over the top. Like, it's not. It was
like subtle until it wasn't.
Exactly. And it didn't take me out of the story.
Yes.
Like,
yes. It came to this culmination of her writing on the walls, and then it kind of backed off a little bit. And then you had that big grand ending.
Yeah.
So I think it was definitely...
I can see that too, like how the very end was very much obviously more theatrical than the rest of the book, but it didn't take it away from me at all. And I liked the vengeance plot a lot.
Yeah. So overall, we liked it. We addressed the outside issues.
Yeah.
But as a story, it's okay to read a story and just be in it for the story.
Yeah, and that's like kind of like for me, and it feels like I don't really ever catch on to those things until after I read something, and then I like being educated about it after. Because I'm like, oh, I missed something, and I would rather be I'd rather be notified that, oh, this is actually kind of not okay, and be like, oh, like you're right, like I should have clocked that, but I didn't, and I like the story, and, you know.
And that's the benefit of us doing this podcast too, is we never used to look at books as critically as we do, which is both a good thing and a bad thing.
Oh my god!
But it's something to think about
100%.
For all of us. So I'm still going to read his next book, and then I'll give him another chance.
We'll see.
But that's the last chance, buddy.
You know, we have him in the Riley Sager fan club. Fan club. Like, Riley Sager is our president.
And this man we're determining whether he's fully in it. Because he already has a strike against him being a man, you know?
I know, but then he brought up Storybook Land, and I was like, I love this guy.
I've got to go to this Storybook
Land. a huge nostalgic part of my life. Eric has never been there either. And I was like,
is this a made-up place?
No, it's not. I swear to God, it's real. We did field trips there in my elementary school, and then my mom has just my parents brought me there a time or two. But yeah,
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm very excited for this. Okay,
we'll report back on that eventually.
Yeah, it'll be on a Bookish Banter after we go to Storybook.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. If you like what you heard, please make sure to follow, subscribe, and rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you utilize. If you have any book recommendations or questions for us, you can email us at fullybookedcalfpod@gmail.com. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at fullybookedcalfpod to see our upcoming reads. Thanks for checking us out, and remember,
if you need us, we're fully booked. Bye!